Welcome back to the Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Thursday of potentially dastardly possibilities as Ukraine gets invaded by Russia. Kind of crazy. Anyways, depending upon how the rest of the day goes, if things really start to get crazy around the US Open, it is possible that I might do a live stream around then. However, for right now, I thought it'd be best to get my thoughts out on a more singular video so that we can follow up on this ongoing thread of analysis that we've been having for about 3.5 to almost 4 weeks now. Starting off with the big break of about 41,500 about 4 weeks or so ago now, leading down to our targets at the monthly 21 on the $35,000 region, then bouncing up first to our target to $41,000 based off the bear trap at 37, and then reaching our major target at 45. Then that is where things change, and that's kind of what leads us up to right now. We were looking for a pullback down to about $41,000. However, underneath $40,000 is where things were no longer bullish, or at least having a bullish bias, but we're now bearish, looking for targets back down to the mid $30,000 territory. That's essentially where we're at right now. So I wanted to follow up on that and kind of go over, hopefully not too nastily, and apologies for the clickbait title of today, or assuming that I do one. I haven't actually decided just yet. I never decide that until later. But I wanted to go over what I believe the worst case scenario would likely be in hopefully the most succinct way possible regarding, potential World War III, which who knows where that actually leads towards. I'm certainly not an expert in that regard. What I would like to talk about, however, is what I'd expect on the chart. So this is worst case scenario analysis. We'll obviously come back at the end of this video and talk about more short-term timeframes. But this is very much going to be focused on the higher-term timeframes here. So I want to start off not on the Krown trading application. Obviously, there are many relevant things here, but I want to start off over here on my, on my stochastic momentum chart. We have a big signal that can be confirmed as soon as tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and that is the 5-day time frame. The 5-day time frame is going to have a chance to cross the downside right here, meaning that 5-day stochastic momentum turning back down. It's not just that, however, because we do see two other things that are also, or actually three other things that are also in that same vein that do amplify that signal. So one, we would see if that condition is met, which will be met, by the way, with any sort of a closure today below 36,000 and about 300. Check your exchange, so it will be a little bit slightly different on those. But we'd first and foremost see that the 5-day stochastic momentum would be playing still and held still within the bearish control zone, in this region, essentially below here where my cursor is. On top of that, we'd also see that the DMI is, obviously still negative, so that would be on the same side as well. And we see that the ADX is starting to actually pick up a little bit of, it's starting to pick up a little bit here. So that would be a signal in and of itself. And that would very likely suggest that we do see further downside action into the end of the month and probably open up into March with more downside as well. So what I want to bring that on over into is the monthly closure, which is not closing today, not closing tomorrow, but going to be closing on Monday. Yeah, Monday the 28th is the last day of the month. And here's essentially what's at stake, or at least what I believe that could potentially lead into. Again, we're talking about worst case scenario, not maybe the most likely thing to happen, but worst case scenario, and then we'll come back a little bit later, offer up some validations for the shorter term timeframes. But it is this essentially, the monthly chart on my secondary chart right here. And we are going to have a chance for Bitcoin to close below the white 20 simple on the monthly here, which is currently trading at about 36,740. So obviously, if the 5-day criteria is met on our momentum charts that we just looked at, then it would lead into this as well, very, very likely. And if that criteria is met with any sort of a monthly closure below 36,700, we would obviously already have this in place with the monthly MACD, which is crossing to the downside for the first time since January, February of March 2020. You don't need me to tell you what happened right after that. And the few other times that we actually did see it happen were essentially major moves. In this case, we can call out this time over here from August 2014. That was coming off of your bull trap at about $600, a little bit over $600 before eventually hitting all the way down to just below $200. Now this did take about 4, 5, 6 months and for a price action to get all the way down around there. But you'll notice that once Bitcoin closed below that white 20 simple, that's when things really started to accelerate and, look a lot more dire for the long term. Same thing over here in 2018, as you do see Bitcoin once again playing off the white 20 simple, play. We get the MACD cross the downside of the monthly, And once the 20 simple is closed below, which is right here, it's not actually on the big red dildo to the downside in November, but it's actually in October. That is, well, that was kind of like the last chance for love before playing out almost a, or sorry, not almost, but more than a 50% move to the downside before finding its final lows. And then, of course, the most recent example was coming into the Rona dump that we saw a couple years ago in January, February of 2020, obviously. And that was right around here. In fact, this is actually not exactly on it. It was right here at about 9,500, let's say, on a closing basis. Obviously, the closure below the white 20 simple and subsequent move below it were all in the same time frame, but this one happened a little bit faster. But again, pretty mega downside move, obviously. And what do we have going on right now? Well, we obviously already have the monthly cross to the downside. We see that that will be consistent as long as Bitcoin's closing below $54,000 end of month, which that's almost a $20,000 from where we're at right now, quite far away. And of course we do see that the 20 simple is, we're currently a little bit more than $1,000 below right now. So that is a relevant thing to be aware of as far as I'm concerned, coming into the month of March. And what would be a technical target for that? Well, as you can see, based off of all of these signals here, or actually I should probably bring this back up, based off all the, of all these signals, Bitcoin did find its lows basically around this green moving average right here, which is a 55 exponential moving average on the monthly specifically. You can see it took a long time in 2014, 2015, spent about almost a year down around those lows. But yes, it did provide essentially the low. Same thing over here in 2018, 2019. We even saw a few closures below, but didn't really spend too much time away from it, to be fair. And then in 2020, we see the same thing, kind of finding its edge right around that 55. Again, I know that some people are going to say, well, we saw a wick all the way down to like 4,000. Yes, that is very true. But if you go over here to a daily, you'll notice that a lot of that price action was essentially, by end of day, I think Bitcoin, did close basically around 5,000 and play between about 5,000 and 6,000 for a while. And that essentially is where the monthly 55 was. Let me just reference that. Yep, 53.40 actually. So yeah, pretty damn bang on. And where is it trading right now? It is trading currently just below $23,000. So, if I am talking about potential worst case scenario here, I do think that would probably be it. How long does it take for something like that to happen? Assuming that we get that monthly closure below that specific region and also the 5-day tonight to precipitate that below, I think it was 36.3. Yeah, 36.3. Well, it could still take another half year to a year perhaps, but ultimately that would make me quite bearish at the end of the day. There would obviously be some major areas to be aware of for some very likely significant bounces along the way. Obviously, the low $29,000 to $31,000 region, kind of our macro area, not right here, but if I were to do it on this chart at least, be right around here, would be a good area for that. And then, of course, below there, there's still probably can be some bounces around, probably somewhere in the upper 20s as well. Who knows? But ultimately, if I'm looking at very higher term timeframes, I would be looking for price action down around there. To take that case one step forward as well, on the monthly closure, not only do we have to worry about the all of those things that we just looked at on that prior chart, but on monthly stochastic momentum right here, you will very likely notice, if I go to a fresh chart as well, no. Okay, yeah, here we go. Bitstamp has some good history. That we will see monthly stochastic momentum turn to the downside officially, or continue to the downside, also rejecting the bullish control zone here, two very important parts, with any sort of a closure at end of month below 54,330. So that'd kind of be adding a little bit of confluence onto that. The last time that we saw something relatively similar, or just the last two times where we've even just seen the monthly stochastic momentum lose the bullish control zone was in April 2018, or kind of, I guess it's more like March 2018, and then also February of 2014. Well, that was this bull trap right here, and basically this major high right here before moving much further south. And once again, we're kind of getting that signal over here coming into February, March. So I do think that it's relevant to be aware of these things as like the worst case scenario, at least for right now, as far as I can see. Obviously things can get, better or worse over time. And we're just we're just kind of in a period of uncertainty right now, obviously, with the global situation. So I'm not qualified to comment on that, nor do I have any real well thought out opinion on that. I defer to my friends who actually do spend their time studying those sorts of things to kind of educate me on that as best as possible. And even then, I'll probably mess it up anyway. So I try to avoid talking about it. But when it comes to just straight up charts here, if you are on the higher term timeframes, there's a pretty damn good question in this live stream that I did earlier with Jason today. It's like, What should I do right now? If I want, if I'm like looking long term and I want to sell right here, I've already sold right here. Well, fair enough. Now, this is of course not financial advice. I can only the best that I can do in this situation is just simply put myself in that person's shoes, or in that sort of scenario myself with those preferences. So the preferences is long term. I've sold out on my bags here, is as the saying goes. And the question is, what if I'm wrong? How will I know that I'm wrong? Well, looking at it from my perspective, it's actually quite simple. Anything above this last sort of high region right here at about $44,500 to $45,000, as long as Bitcoin's below there, we don't have anything resembling remotely a reversal, obviously, and that would be the bare minimum that I'd be looking for in order to denote something resembling a reversal to the upside. And at that point, I probably would be looking at major targets up into mid to low 50s actually over time. But until that happens, the path of least resistance is still to the downside. And now I want to go over the very low term timeframes over here. And kind of talk about the last 24 hours, because in the last 24 hours, or the last video that I did, I was looking for a bit of a bouncy bounce into the $39,500 to $40,000 region. We actually didn't quite get there. We got to 39,300 or so, it looks like. But in this case, any sort of a lower high below that region was essentially that weakness that I was looking for below the 382 in this case for a continuation of that trending move to the downside. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Obviously, we're coming off a big level right here. So in the short term, is Bitcoin likely to extend this bounce and play out a range, between like 36.5 and kind of our current lows of the day right now? Probably yes. I don't really have a strong opinion on that. These are the times where I really think and really am compelled to be looking at the higher term timeframes, because depending upon how this situation evolves, especially into US Open later today, things potentially could get very nasty. I mean, I think a lot of people are around for March 2020, obviously. So not saying that it's going to be one of those situations, but I think it has potential to be if the geopolitical situation really gets, what's it called? What is the word that I'm looking for? Escalated. Yes, escalated. So I have no comment on that. I'm just commenting on if it does escalate, and we do see our current lows taken out. I mean, obviously this day can get a lot more nasty. For the short-term timeframes, however, where do things start to change around, or if at all, anytime soon? To be honest, I actually don't think that I'd have an area in the short-term timeframes right now. I suppose the best that I'd be able to do is yesterday's high at 39.3. In fact, that would be the only thing that I find relevant on a medium-term timeframe here, that being the 6 and the 12-hour. Above there, I'd probably be looking for Bitcoin to kind of grind it out and play a move back up into the shallow 40s or so. But for right now, with Bitcoin on the lows, and we're still haven't even seen the U.S. Open just yet. I personally would like to have cash on hand and be on the sidelines in order to take advantage of the more obvious opportunities. If we were to get I was about to say a nuke, but maybe the wrong terminology to be using in this time. But basically, like a big move to the downside or a big move to the upside. I'm happy to play off the peripheries in those cases above 44.5 to 45 on a higher term time frame. That would look absolutely epic for a major low being in, and Bitcoin very likely to working its way up significantly high after that. By the same token, as long as Bitcoin's below there, the trend is to the downside on pretty much all timeframes that matter. And with the 5-day and the monthly closure kind of looming overhead with specific interest to the 5-day as it's happening sooner rather than later, I do express that, it's probably a better time to be waiting, at least in my experience. So with all of that in mind, I hope that this one serves you well. Again, I'm not saying this to scare anyone. I'm saying this as a reasonable and statistical, or hopefully a reasonable and what I believe is a statistically relevant thing to be keeping an eye out for if it were to happen, and if we get those next set of confirmations, which are going to start to become relevant in I suppose in the next 14 and a half hours, and then the next big one is going to be in the next few days. We only got like 4 days left, so Monday basically. Until then, I do think that it's time to be staying safe, and hopefully this information has served you in some way well. Oh, I also forgot to go over the underlying market dynamics over here. Fear and greed index. I imagine we're probably going to see that print lower. Currently at a 25 right now. That's not great. Funny rates are starting to work their way a little bit further south. I do see on the daily we are printing slightly negative rates, almost at negative 0.01%. So there will be bounce along the way. Obviously, if I go down to an hourly data feed, we actually don't see that. It's actually 0%. So it must be averaged out. I'm trying to reference some moments changes over here, but I don't. Yeah, there. You know, it must be balanced out somehow. Anyways, what other things can we be looking at here? Bitcoin dominance up, obviously, because well, well, it is one of those scenarios, isn't it? Let's see. Do we don't see extremes over here? MBT is always going to be low right now, I suppose. Nuple even coming down as well, which is not the best sign. And hash rate's relatively high. Yeah, other than that, I don't really have much to make out of that, to be quite frank right now. I'd actually be just going over straight up price action and the open interest, a big one for me right here. So in these sort of events where we may see a major washout opportunity, I do want to be aware of the major areas on this. So on an hourly, you can see that we're actually already below 10 billion. The next area that I really want to be aware of is basically between about 8 and 9 billion, which I've actually already set up alerts for. You can do the same yourself. My under 10 billion has already been triggered, but as you can see right here, I have one for 9 and then one for 8, and it streams to my desktop. That's exactly what I want, because around those regions is where I'd probably be looking for a tradable bounce as well. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for right now. Should we go over short-term time for momentums? You know, the thing is that it really wouldn't take too much to get Bitcoin on a bounce here. That's the thing. If you're looking at a daily closing above 350 or so would do it. 12 hours probably already up. Yeah, it is technically up right now. We'll turn down below 34.5. Full hour will actually continue down below about 38, so that's not great. Bi-hourly is printing what? Is loading, is up above about 34.8, so that is also on the more hopium side, I think. And then hourly is also coming off of lows at 34.7, and I forgot to reference the 6 hour, which I quite like. 6 hours actually freshly down below 36.6. So I do see a lot of things kind of pivoted in similar regions, which would imply to me that if we are going to see continuation to the downside today, this would be my validation for continuing downside today. And I guess we can come up with some targets for that soon enough, but I need to see a 4 hour closure below about 34,500. If I see something like that, I would be looking for the next kind of washout event, probably somewhere down around about 33, maybe a little bit lower than that before the next potentially big bounce. All right, cool. I think that does it for today's video. Again, a bit more of more of a hypothetical video, as you know, I think it's very important to be aware of like the worst case scenario in like a hopefully relevant way. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Just be aware of what the triggers are and how they kind of flow through here. And with that said, take care and see you hopefully soon.